Hi guys, it's Steph here and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing something slightly different, and that is talking about movies, which I don't do very often on my channel because I am primarily books and planners, but I do enjoy a good film every now and then. I suppose my biggest film obsession for the last 10 years has been the MCU films, which came out initially in 2008 with Iron Man, and I have religiously watched them ever since. Well, with one exception, but I'm going to be rectifying that very soon. A few people said that they would be interested in hearing my thoughts on the MCU films, so I thought I would film a couple of videos just talking about some things that I really liked about them, some things that I didn't really like. Obviously, Infinity War is coming out very, very soon, and I'm very excited for it. I'm also filled with a little bit of dread because I know that it's about time that a few of my favourite characters are retired from the MCU universe, whether that means actual retirement or whether they're killed off, and I don't know how prepared I am for that. So I thought I would film these sort of recaps in the phases that have been set out by the MCU head honchos. So for those of you who aren't familiar, every 6 films is grouped together in what's called a phase. So there are the phase 1 films, the phase 2 films. We're currently in phase 3. Infinity War, I think, ends phase 3, and then we move on to possibly phase 4. I don't know exactly what they're going to do because I think Infinity War is going to set the bar a little bit for what happens in the future. So I'm going to talk about the phase 1 films today, which are Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, and the first Avengers film. I will say that hands down, over the entirety of the films that I've seen so far, if we break them up into the character arcs that you see, my favourite set of films are by far the Captain America films, which is really, really strange for me because I'm not usually drawn to the character who is the morally right, perfect sort of character. I do really like the flawed characters and I like the journey that they have, but for whatever reason, I think the Captain America films have had the best story arc collectively from the individual Captain America films, tying them into the big group films as well. As such, if I was going to rank these 6 films, I would rank Captain America as my favourite, then Iron Man 1, then Avengers, then Thor, then Iron Man 2, and then The Incredible Hulk, because a lot of people don't really consider The Incredible Hulk to be part of the canon still because it really doesn't fit in and it has a different actor playing the main character, and we just go with it. And I did include it in my rewatch because I just wanted to be authentic and say I've watched all of them. Starting off with Iron Man, this came out in 2008 and it really set the tone for what they were trying to do. Robert Downey Jr. I think was a really great choice for Tony Stark. I think he just embodies the character so very well, and I think now he's basically synonymous with Tony Stark. And what I think it did was it showed that comic book films could be grounded in real world situations, such as real world wars. When Tony's taken hostage and forced to build weapons for enemies of the United States, it really shows how his character is going to develop in his personal arc, because he goes from being this very arrogant, cocky, self-obsessed billionaire to realizing that what he does for a living actually does have implications and quite significant ones, and that really turns his personality, but it does it in a way where it's extreme. He doesn't go from just going, okay, how can I change? He's going, this is what I'm going to do and what I'm going to do now. And he's really a short-term thinking character, and you see that the whole way through his story arcs in this universe. He's very short-term, right, something's a problem, we're going to fix it right now, without thinking about what could happen later on. The really cool things about this, you've got Jarvis, who is the artificial intelligence that runs Tony's house, and he was awesome, and he was voiced by Paul Bettany, who later features in the films anyway. Gwyneth Paltrow I think was amazing as Pepper Potts. She became a really strong character through the story arc, and I really appreciated that because here you have really big name actors acting in a comic book film, raising the stakes and raising the profile of these characters and getting people to watch them who might normally never have. Plus, it had an amazing, amazing soundtrack. It was just really well done. Loved the Iron Man suits, and I mean, the really cool thing about Iron Man is that we get to see a huge progression of the suits and the technology over the course of the films. But going back and watching a film that's 10 years old now, the CGI and the technology effect still looks amazing, even in that film. So I think it would date reasonably well, which is a great thing. Then we come to The Incredible Hulk. In this film, Edward Norton played the Hulk, and he did an okay job. I think the Hulk is really, really tricky to nail. I mean, they've done plenty of adaptations over the years, and I think they're all okay. I think this one was a step up above the Eric Bana one, which I think, because this one wasn't so much an origin, so I think they still use that film as the origin basis rather than going right back to the beginning. Bruce Banner is in hiding. He's hiding from the US military because he's trying to control the Hulk, whereas they want to use it as a weapon. He's trying to unravel the mystery and trying to reverse what's been done to him, and yeah, so he finds himself back in the US, back trying to find answers and getting caught up with Betty and General Ross. And I mean, the fight sequences are really cool in The Incredible Hulk because they're just so big, because the Hulk is such a big character. And when you fight with the Hulk, everything goes to crap. So I really liked the fight sequences. I didn't mind Edward Norton. I think it was a good setup for General Ross because he comes back later on as well. And so this sets sort of the tone for people who might not be familiar with the character. And I think it really did set up the fact that Bruce is trying really, really hard to control this monster inside of him, and I think that is then picked up later on when we come to the Avengers films. Then you have Iron Man 2, which, let's be honest, was not a great Iron Man film, or at least not in my opinion. It's my least favourite of the three. I don't know what they thought the direction would be. I mean, good things about it, they introduced Black Widow in a way that was, it wasn't subtle, but it was a way of bringing her in without doing something super flashy and showy. She just becomes integrated into the story really seamlessly, and they've done that really well with Scarlett Johansson in these films. She just pops up in different films, and of all the characters, I think you see her development with the rest of the Avengers cast really well because of it, because she just sort of slips in here and there. Pepper plays more of a part because she basically takes over running Tony's company for him, and you can suddenly see the difference between him running it and her running it, and the fact that she's more of a grown-up than he is. So that was really cool. You also have the return of some of the other S.H.I.E.L.D. characters. So Coulson, who I forgot to mention, did pop up in the first Iron Man film, but he comes back into it and is more of a mainstay character. And Samuel L. Jackson's in it, so we get to see more of Nick Fury and how he ties into the universe. And then we begin to look at the grander scale. So we see more of the history, more of Howard Stark, who becomes really important when we come to the Captain America film. And it sort of begins to weave, I guess what I'm probably trying to say is, I think Iron Man is almost this filler where it pulls together a whole lot of threads that you're going to need later on. But the story itself, I didn't find all that fascinating, where you've got the government trying to take control of the Iron Man weapon and then going to a rival weapons builder, was it Justin Hammer, whatever, and trying to get him to do the same sort of thing, except he is not as adept at that sort of stuff as Stark Industries is. And then you've got the main antagonist, Ivan, woven in as well because he wants revenge on Stark, yada, yada, yada. As such, I didn't find that to be the most interesting story. I did like the change in actors for Rhodey. That was really good. The final sequence at the end where they're at the World Fair and you've got all of the drones and Iron Man and War Machine. That was a really cool sequence and I absolutely love that. But that was the highlight for me, whereas I think the first Iron Man film, I think it had more of a complete story to it. Then there's Thor, and Thor was just nice because it was a departure from the grounded in reality stuff, because Thor is not grounded in reality. He's basically a god, and in such compared to humanity, and he's from this race of people who live for a very, very long time. They have a lot of strength, they have powers and abilities that they can tap into. And I think what was nice was seeing how Thor begins his journey to becoming a better person. So he, again, starts off very arrogant, very self-assured, and thinks that he's right, thinks that he deserves to take over the throne from his father Odin, and yet he's brash and impulsive and he does things that he shouldn't and that put people at risk. And he's punished for it, and he has to learn humility, and he has to learn that sometimes you have to think before you act. And he's banished to Earth and he meets Jane and Darcy and Eric Selvig. Also has his first interactions with S.H.I.E.L.D., which some of those scenes are hilarious. I love the sequence where everyone's trying to pull the hammer out of the ground. I mean, it was the scene where Thor goes back to try and claim his hammer and he's fighting his way into the compound that S.H.I.E.L.D. has erected. It that was really poignant, because you see him finally realize that he actually has to work at this. It's not something that's going to be handed to him. And I think that was a really beautiful character moment, and that starts his journey. Plus you get introduced to Hawkeye, who I adore. Hawkeye's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. The whole thing was just really great. And Thor was really funny. There's a lot of funny moments in Thor, and I thought there was great characters, great cast. Then we come to Captain America, and this I loved. This is really their historical fiction film, because we're telling the backstory of Captain America, who has just been uncovered in the ice, but we don't know who he is and where he's come from. And so we get that story of Steve Rogers, who is this plucky young guy who has everything against him, but he's determined to go and fight in the war because he believes it's the right thing to do. He wants to protect people and he wants to do his part, and yet he is not physically capable of joining the military because of his size, because of his medical history, and it's devastating for him. He keeps trying because he just wants to serve. And even his best friend Bucky doesn't really understand that, because he wants his friend to be safe. And if Steve goes off to war, he's not going to be safe because he's, you know, the little guy. And then he's taken in and accepted into Erskine's program, and becomes part of the super soldier program, the only successful participant in that program. And that whole message of stay who you are really comes through, and you can tell he's a really good guy. He's not out there to kill people. He wants to protect people. If that means that he might have to go in and fight, yeah, he's going to do that, but he's not doing it because he wants to hurt anyone else. And I think that's a really important message, and one that you don't always necessarily get in films. And yes, he does go on to be in many fighting engagements and whatnot, but I think you can tell that it's coming from a good place. I mean, there's so much to love in the Captain America film. I mean, Chris Evans is amazing. When I picture Captain America, I picture Chris Evans. I think he did an incredible job. We get introduced to Peggy Carter, who is just incredible. She is one of the strongest female characters in the MCU, and I love how she now just pops up sporadically in different time periods, in different flashbacks and whatnot throughout the films, because she's just one of those characters who I think is always going to be there. And I think the films are richer for it, for having a character like her. We get to meet Howard Stark, Tony's father, when he's a young man, and just sort of see, you know, it's a little bit of an insight into where Tony came from, really, and I think that was really, really lovely. The relationship between Steve and Bucky is fantastic, and I think sets the tone for later films, but I think the whole thing is just so strong and carries itself so well that you could watch this film and nothing else and walk away feeling like, yeah, I watched a comic book film, but this was a comic book film that had heart, and it was a really strong story. So for a lot of reasons, that's why it is one of my favorite films, because the strength of the story is there. Then we come to the first Avengers film, which is really, I think, a great achievement in what they've been trying to do, because it's the first time that they've brought together really big name actors playing big name character roles and thrown them all into one film, and it hasn't been a total disaster, because they've found a way to weave all of these stories together in such a way that it is plausible and believable, that everyone gets their moment to shine and stand out. But the whole thing is not really about one individual person, it is about the collective whole and how these people work together or don't work together. I like that there's a whole lot of tension between everyone, because they've really only just met. They don't know a whole lot about one another. They have to try and learn how to work together, when really there's a whole lot of maneuvering and manipulation going on in the background from all sorts of different perspectives. And it really sets up the friendship, but also the antagonistic relationship of Tony and Steve's relationship in later films, because they're so different and yet they're the same. They both are really strong in their beliefs. They're both good guys, but the way that they approach things is different, and I think this really sets it up. Plus, we get Loki, and I know I didn't talk about Loki in the Thor film, but I mean, Loki was amazing in the Thor film, but he was incredible in Avengers, because he suddenly becomes this very, very strong antagonistic force. You get to see for the first time that as a result of everything that happened in Thor, now he's basically become a puppet for other more powerful beings, just because he wants to try and carve out a space for himself. So I think it's really interesting, and I love the Avengers film. I think it was just great to see how a group of people might come together and learn to work with one another and save the world at the same time. Great fight sequences. There's so many funny moments in this one, because I take my hat off to the writers and to the actors, because some of the moments are just gold. There's just a lot of stuff going on in the background, and I just think this universe is so rich and so wonderful that it does inspire people to watch them and watch them continuously, because you want to know all of the backstories. You want to know how everything links together and what's going to happen next. Those are some of my thoughts on phase 1. Hopefully it made some sort of sense. I'm going to film my thoughts on phase 2 as well, and hopefully put those up this week. I probably won't film my thoughts on phase 3 until after I see Infinity War, but we'll see. So if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know your thoughts on the films. Which of the phase 1 films is your favorite? I'm quite happy to have people argue with me that, you know, Captain America is not the best one of the lot, but, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I think people identify with different characters, which what makes this cinematic universe so great is you can sort of jump in anywhere. You don't have to justify yourself to anyone because there's something for everyone. So let me know in the comments. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.